Hello, this is Mike Van Meter. Welcome to the Recovery is Possible podcast. I want to thank you for joining me. You can reach us at our Facebook site, which is also called Recovery is Possible, or our website, which is vanmeterwellnesssolutions.com. I want to introduce you to our brand new sponsor, FHE Health. This episode is, in fact, sponsored by FHE Health, a substance abuse and mental health treatment center specializing in treatment for first responders' needs, including PTSD, anxiety, and substance use. Take the first steps to a better life today by visiting fhealth.com. So tonight, I'd like to introduce you to Mike N. And I met Mike N., I want to say, about 4 years ago, about the time he came into the program of recovery that I belong to. And just by way of background, I actually met Mike's wife prior to meeting Mike. And I met her in a program that is designed for spouses of or significant others of people that need to be in recovery. And I just remember, what a great positive woman, his wife was. I'm saying at the time still is. Yeah, still know Mike and his wife, both fantastic people. And I just remember hearing her talking about, how she was working hard to take care of herself and work her own program of recovery while she was hoping and praying and working to get her husband into recovery. And she just had so much hope, and she had so much desire and willingness to take care of herself. But at the same time, her husband, Mike, who we're going to talk to tonight, was struggling with alcoholism himself. And I'm happy to report that I've known Mike over the last 4 years. And I remember Mike when he first came in to the program. I mean, the first week, I believe, is when I met Mike. And one thing I will say about Mike is that he hit the ground running with this program, which is, if you've been around recovery for a while, is unusual. More often the case, people really fight and resist the program of recovery, and lots of relapses, lots of issues, and it's sad because really just people need to follow some simple suggestions. And Mike did that. I have to say that Mike grabbed hold of recovery with everything he had, and it's been phenomenal. And it's hard for me to believe that it's already been 4 years since he started the program. And so with that, Mike N. is with us here tonight. Mike, welcome.
Thanks for having me, Mike. Appreciate it.
Yeah. So, Mike, tell us a little bit about yourself. Sort of your background. Just a little bit about your upbringing, maybe your life, and so what led to the issues that brought you to this program?
Okay. So I grew up in the great state of Maine. Single parent. It was me and my sister only. And, I had really all my relatives around me growing up in Maine. But, it was the normal stuff in the 60s and 70s. You have some drinking relatives. Never noticed anybody particular overindulging per se. So it was a great childhood. I wouldn't say the best, but it was, to me, it was a great childhood. My mom did a lot of things, to make sure that obviously I never missed my dad. Come to find out later on, he also struggled with addiction, with alcohol. So that's probably where I got it through the bloodline. And that's explained in my story a little bit down the road, but so I really didn't have a lot of issues. I did your typical drink every once in a while at parties, in high school. Tested marijuana, really didn't like it too much. But I had a really good childhood. I was kind of an A-B student. And so my friends I was into, sports and, other curricular activities. So it was pretty germane growing up during the 60s and 70s, and of course 80s is when I entered active duty military. And to be honest, I've heard a lot of stories. That's probably where that love of alcohol probably took off. I had I went to basic training in San Antonio, Texas, and we graduated after 8 weeks, and we all went out to have our first beer. It was a tall, frosty one at a assembly area, at a rec center activity for us folks, and it probably just took off from there. Thinking back, getting into the groove of being in the military, hang around with folks. And, I was and I still am in some kind of law enforcement capacity. So cops were known, specifically military cops, for doing a lot of partying. So I would venture to say that's probably where my drinking kind of took off a little bit. And I love the fact that how it made me feel. I didn't need it to make me comfortable around people. I'm an extreme extrovert, but I did like how it made me feel going out to parties, socializing, whatever that was. So, and that continued on throughout my 20 years so in the military, in military assignments that I was at. There were plenty of times where, I drank excessively, or, there's sometimes I didn't drink at all, or I drank some. So, but there was always a drink somewhere along the line when I was on my break time from work. Or, there was, some lag time, maybe a few here and there. It never had got to the point where I got obsessive on it and I needed it to kind of control my life like I did later on drinking. So I didn't have any significant events happen to me while I was in the military. I retired with full military honors, discharged, retired in 2004. There were probably some times where I probably shouldn't have been driving. But, cops, there were no consequences along the road at all. That's one of the problems lying. And if I was drunk or inebriated, there was always some, fellow cop to take you home and tuck you into bed, whatever. So, so it was a life of non-consequences for me. And, I retired in 2004, excuse me. And that kind of still continued on my way, but not realizing that the fact that I think it came with the fact that I knew I wasn't in the military anymore. And so I think, and it's the same time I kind of met my wife I'm with today, that my drinking kind of accelerated a little bit along the way, not me paying attention to it. But I think my wife early on kind of noticed that as well, where, I went from, having several beers with the folks at a local bar, to I was having boxes of wine, through the week. I could go through a box of wine in a day or so, but it became a lifestyle for me. It was, I tell people it's much more like, it became more like if you're drinking, you need a glass of water, or you're putting on your pants in the morning or taking a shower. It was part of a routine that I had built into me, not even knowing that. So, it's not of like needing it. It just, I put it in my system because it became a normal part of my life. And there were times, because I had gone through a divorce and struggling with my ex-wife, and I tell my wife now, we talked about it, is like, I just got done screaming and yelling at my ex-wife. I need a drink, get me a drink. So I use that to kind of, as a way to calm my nerves, like most alcoholics I've heard in the room, and they're stressed or they need a vent or need an outlet. Alcohol was the place to go. Certainly I used that. So, and that continued on until I moved up here in the Northern Virginia area. And my new assignment, same thing. I worked at another federal agency that, drank excessively, and I drank excessively with them. And so that continued on, and I moved to another federal agency within a year, and the drinking continued. Along that way, when I moved up in Northern Virginia in 2008, I became self-isolated because I didn't have any friends up here. So I was always drinking alone, besides with my wife. So that was a point that, people talk about isolating themselves because they don't want anybody to see them, or they want to drink alone for that specific reason. I just didn't have anybody. So I always drank alone. So I moved to another federal agency, and that continued on. Then I was experiencing some physical issues while I was at work, and I always thought it was maybe my eating habits or, the stress I was having at work, not realizing that I was drinking so much that I was having withdrawal symptoms at work, right? It's like where I couldn't even like type a memo, or I would have the sweats, or I would start shaking some. But I just brushed it off as because of stress, not knowing that the alcohol was inducing all that to me, and that I was actually having withdrawals.
Yeah, DTs, delirium tremens. Yep.
Yeah. So that, who knows what kind of danger I put myself in. I know that there was one time I was with my wife at the metro station, and I just collapsed in her arms. And that was probably starting of that process, probably in 2014, somewhere around there. So that kind of happened where I got evaluated, and again, along the line, no one has ever told me that I drank too much, or you may be an alcoholic, or you need to seek help. Nowhere along the 20 something years that anybody said that. Mostly probably because the people that I hung around with drank like me. Some didn't drink like me. I drank more than them, but no one ever kind of said that. Not being around people that didn't drink, they don't see that. But my wife started to see that. She got a little bit more concerned about my physical well-being. And I know at the hospital, when I was on a military base, one of the gentlemen suggested that I go maybe to a treatment facility. Have I thought about, this, that? Again, no one has ever talked to me about AA, right? So more so to get help at a medical facility and go through treatment, yada, yada, yada. So, and that took me a little while to do that. And my venture started with treatment and those kind of things in 15. And in between that time, I got my, first DUI, last DUI, my chance. So, and that was kind of demoralizing in itself, but it didn't never stop me. My wife came on scene of the accident I was at. It was, thank God I didn't kill anybody. For a law enforcement guy to be put behind bars was really, I buried my head, but I still continued on because I thought I could beat this thing. Because, being in the military, that's kind of the mindset. You can adapt and overcome. You're never beat down. You just continue to move forward until you succeed. And alcoholism has been the first time that I've been beaten down and that I couldn't, do it on my own. So I went to a couple of treatment facilities. One is to just kind of for my wife. I spent 28 days there, came out. The first thing I did when I got home, I drove home. I went out. I wasn't even technically sober outside 2 hours, and I was already at the ABC store packing up some liquor because I knew the fact as soon as I got out, I wanted to have some, right? So and that happened twice, and it just kept on going on and on. And she thought like a geographical move would help me, so we went from one city to the next. She didn't realize in the fact that she actually moved me closer to my addiction, because literally now I could walk across the street to a store
yeah.
that also had a little mall outlet that had an ABC store in it. So now I didn't have to drive anywhere, and I could just walk to my addiction, right? But the positive thing was when I found out too is that she actually moved me in an area that has so many AA meetings. I think that was one of the benefits too. So I struggled on and off with that for years, a couple of years with that. And like Mike was saying, that he met my wife. She started in Al-Anon a little bit earlier on her recovery. And I think that's really been beneficial to us in the long term in our relationship. And I struggled with it. She was always gone, and I had resentments. It was crazy. So after she had told me, I had several trips to the emergency room that I had no idea I had been going at all. I had blackouts, brownouts, whatever outs you could call them, I was having them. So, so the last time that I thought I was going to stop drinking was December of 2016. And, I spent Christmas 5 days in detox. So I finished up that, And I came out the next year, of course, 2017. And, I still thought I could kick this thing. And I couldn't. And it just kept on rolling. And then I was explaining to Mike before the show that, January 10th was the last day. I piled up a lot of alcohol in me. And I'm not sure, but why I thought a good idea was to try to walk across the street again. I made it to right outside my condo to the sidewalk and smack face down into the sidewalk I went. And I remember some people talking to me. They rushed me to the ER, and I saw it in my wife's eyes, and I've seen it before, but, seeing how she looked and just really was an eye opener for me. It wasn't like a spiritual awakening, but, someone's talking to you, the man upstairs talking to you. There's a lot of things that are going on. So she left me there. She gave me back the next day. And like I said, I made it home, and physically it took me 2 days to recover from that. And, unbeknownst to me, she had already been talking to, now who's my sponsor now. There was she had gotten his number 2 years ago. So like 2015, I'd stuck it on the refrigerator. And so I was ready to call it. And, I pulled on the number off the fridge and, called my sponsor, and then we started the ball rolling. And as, Mike was saying that, you kind of take it full steam. You can't go at, half in this program. If you don't take program seriously, you're going to end up like all the stories that you hear. Right. So I kind of looked at it like military training, being assimilated into the military. I had to take it full on speed and work really hard at it. Same thing with AA, being assimilated into the program. You have to take it seriously. You have to work the steps. You have to talk to people. You get numbers, listening at meetings, shares, those kind of things. Eventually sponsorship, working the steps. I just happen to have this out, and, it's part of our big book reading at page 275. It says AA is not a plan for recovery that can be finished and done with. It is a way of life, and the challenge contained in its principles is great enough to keep any human being striving for as long as he lives. We cannot outgrow this plan. And that's kind of the way I looked at it, right? So if you see some of the charts on a board, on a presentation, there's the circle, big circle around AA in the middle. And then there's overlapping circles on the outside. So the overlapping circles, my professional life, my personal life, other things that mean my, my spirituality, my physical stuff, my mental, kind of all rolled up into that one big circle of AA, or everything overlapping. So that's kind of the way I look at this program, is that everything that I'm doing outside of AA kind of overlaps into the program, because we're supposed to, practice these principles in all our affairs. So I try to do that as much as I can. I don't know if I mentioned, I've had the same sponsor for a little over four years. I've tried to sponsor some people, just it's been very difficult, especially in this COVID environment. And I've heard a lot of struggles, and, big kudos to the people that, come in online on Zoom and say, I have 8 days, several months, whatever it is. I'm not surprised. It's kind of like a shock and awe to me, because I'm thinking to myself, if that was me, I don't know if I could stay sober. I don't know if I could be in a meeting, being honest and open, and I would just, I have to physically be around people, I have to see them, that kind of stuff. So kudos to the people right now that are in Zoom meetings, getting it down, but as I told everybody else, being around other people, being able to sit with somebody and talk to them about their stories and their struggles, physically see them in person, kind of perspective, being at a club somewhere or in a room, is more for me. But for now, it works. And, we go to a few meetings a week, and Mike knows we get couples meeting. I go to a few Zoom meetings a week. So I try to do as much as I can, program wise. I have my daily readings. I reach out to some of my network. Some have not called me back for various reasons, and I've had several. I would say several that have come with me that either have gone back out or have passed away. So that's a tragedy that that they didn't get it early on. And like you said, some people, it takes a little bit longer, but, I'm in my, 50s, I don't have time, I don't have time to waste on whether I need to or not. So the decision has to be made. If you don't, you die. Right. So that's the bottom line. So,
yeah.
Anyways, that's kind of where I'm at. And, yeah.
Yeah. And Mike, I really appreciate you bringing that to us. And I've got a few questions for you here, and we're going to get to that here in a second. First, I just want to say that this episode is sponsored by FHE Health. FHE Health has been providing life-changing behavioral health services for more than 20 years. They treat substance abuse and mental health disorders in an individualized and comprehensive approach. Recognizing the specialized treatment needs of the first responder community, they've created Shatterproof. Shatterproof is a dedicated program for law enforcement, fire, rescue, and similar communities to receive treatment among peers. They're experienced in providing privacy and working with unions for employment. FHE Health is committed to providing the best care experience for our patients, for their families, and our community. Learn more at fhehealth.com. So, Mike, you bring up a lot of very good points here. And I have often said, and as you can see, since we're sponsored by FHE Health, we're working with first responders. You've been a first responder. I've been a first responder, and military. You and I both are both military. By the way, just as a side note, one thing I learned about Mike is I was in the Navy. Those of you who've been listening to this podcast know this. And I was stationed in Keflavik, Iceland for a period of time. And the base is no longer there, but at the time, the base was both Air Force and Navy. And Mike and I were stationed on that base at the same time. Remember that, Mike? Now, we didn't know each other at the time, but we were located there during the same years.
I do that. So, I remember that.
So, I didn't know you at the time, but boy, is it a small world. But I've often said on this show that I know in my work in recovery, some of the toughest people to work with, and I'm saying this because I was that person that was difficult to work with, because after all, my sobriety took about 10 years from the time I knew I needed to get into sobriety to actually getting it. It was difficult, and I know that I was difficult to work with it. And part of it, and I want the listeners to listen to this closely, and maybe might get you to explain, elaborate on this as well, Mike, is step one of AA. If you are a follower of AA, and I want to make it very clear on this program, I'm not advocating any particular program. That's just the program that I work. If you work another program and it works for you, then have at it. You got to do what works. So in my world, I have found that working with law enforcement and military in particular are difficult, really difficult. But if with the right attitude, I think that the very reason that makes working with the military and law enforcement difficult can actually be an asset to them getting sober. And I'm saying that because I've watched you, Mike, over the last 4 years, utilize the very issues that made it hard for me to get sober. You've turned it around and used it as a benefit to get sober. And what I mean by that is this: if a listener to this program is not familiar with the 12 steps, the first step is I'm powerless over alcohol and my life has become unmanageable. Well, I think the problem, there was two things I did not understand in my recovery, and that was powerlessness, right? I was trained, understand from the age of 19 on in my adult life. I was a Navy pilot. I was a corrections officer. Then I was a police officer, and then I was an FBI agent for over 20 years. And the idea of powerlessness was beaten out of my vocabulary. It was not in my vocabulary. There was nothing I was powerless over I was not powerless over anything. And so that was issue number one. But it wasn't really my fault. Those are good attributes in those jobs. But if you're an addict, it's an absolute death sentence. And so I fought that idea of powerlessness, that I couldn't control anything. That was issue number one. And issue number two for me, I found out later, was I didn't understand truly that addiction was a disease and not a moral issue. That it was a disease that I actually did not have any control over. And Mike, you mentioned that you had the genetic line for addiction in your family, and I did as well. And I didn't understand that, some people have a genetic predisposition to cancer, diabetes, receding hairline, being overweight, whatever. People have genetic, and I think most people accept that without question, that there's a genetic influence in that, right? And I always hear that, that if you want to make it in the NFL or if you want to be an elite athlete, I always hear coaches say, well, first you have to start with good genetics. Okay. But when it comes to recovery, we kind of discount genetics, but it's very real. I had that. And so I had the genetic predisposition, and there was nothing I could do about that. And then the progression of the disease, meaning my drinking got worse and worse over the years. It never got better. And you described that in your story just now, Mike. So, what are your thoughts on that? What I threw up, because where I fought it for 10 years before I got sober, you seem to have embraced. So the military mentality where it's like, okay, I got the mission in front of me. I've got the checklist. I've got the rules. I got the book. Here's the plan. You followed it. I never did, but you did. Am I reading too much into that, or was that sort of your approach?
No, I think you hit it right there. There are a lot, and I've seen it too with my military brethren. It's really across the spectrum, I would say, especially early on. Like you said, if you feel defeated like that, we don't have that sense, in our system because we were assimilated in the military and we don't accept defeat. You know what I mean? So we're not. So what I had to do for step one is just remove the word powerless, right? So I kind of came up with my own word at the time. I can't remember what it was. But I just said I don't want to feel like I'm powerless. I don't want to feel like that early on until you start working the program, and then you eventually say yes. I'll just plug that back in. So I did find it funny, just an offshoot to this, that I met a man in recovery that was kind of an atheist, and he kind of rewrote the 12 steps to kind of mirror what he wanted in his program. It worked for him. He's been sober 20-something years, but it's kind of the things that we do in this program. I think the format is right, spot on. And I kind of looked at like this is an instruction. This is a manual. Standing operating procedure for me to stay alive and stay sober. So that's the way I kind of had to look at it because we use checklists and, standing operating procedures, instructions. If I don't follow these, a lot of people compare it to like, having taking medicine. The doctor prescribes you medicine. If you don't take it, you're going to die, right? So take it, 3 times a day, yada, yada, yada. So that's kind of the format I kind of looked at was, this is the recipe for me anyways to stay sober. And I have a lot of friends that I recently came across that I didn't realize they're sober, but they never go to AA meetings, but they, 13, 14, 15 years haven't had a drink. So to me, that's great, but that probably wouldn't work for me. But you're right. I think for a lot of people with the military mindset or any kind of structural life that you have, we talk about, the folks that are in this program, the intellectuals, those guys. Actually, we make up the biggest part of it, right? Intellectual in AA.
Well, I don't know how intellectual I am, but there are.
Well, we were the smartest drunks ever, right? So,
well, they always say that my best thinking got me to where I was. So I was certainly doing a lot of thinking, but it wasn't working out very well.
And I agree with that. I think sometimes, at that level, kind of overanalyze how easy this program is for complicated people, like we say, right? So It's really simple. There are instructions in here how to do this. Up to page 164, I believe, is just the program itself, and then the rest of it's stories, which is great. So But the original point is, yeah, it's tough, but I was going to try to fight it a little bit, and I've had some discussions with my sponsor, and I did at the beginning. I had some pushback on it instead of sitting back and listening and ingesting. I wanted to be argumentative, questioning those kind of things, and certainly that doesn't get you anywhere when you're trying to get sober and you've never done it before, and people that have years of experience are trying to teach you. So you just kind of have to let that shield down, and make yourself vulnerable in the program a little bit to be, having willingness to do that, being open-minded on all the suggestions. Like I said, in the 4 years that I've been, certainly, Mike, you could probably attest to that being longer. You've heard the stories, and people that just don't listen, or people that go back out and come back in. It's the same old story. I didn't call anybody. I didn't follow directions. I didn't work the program. So, and like you said, this is not for everybody. It's not the only show in town. But certainly the numbers suggest otherwise, that people that actually work the program are honest and open. 70% stay sober. So
yeah, and the ones the 30% that don't do exactly what you were saying, and they were not following the program, and it's so true. It really is. And it was not, and I will attest to this, that it was not until I fully embraced following the suggestions. Now they are just suggestions. They're not dictates. Nobody's making you do anything. But, as I heard it said once, jumping out of an airplane, it's only a suggestion that you put on a parachute. You don't have to put on a parachute. You don't have to. Nobody's going to make you do it. It's highly suggested that you do. But when I put on the parachute, then all I can say is that my life got so much better, better. My marriage has never been better. And I'm very, very fortunate that I've been married to one person, throughout all of this. And I can tell you it's never been better. And, I can't speak for you and your marriage, but it seems like, I remember 4+ years ago, it seems like things are much better in your marriage. Would you say so?
I totally agree with that. It's not like we even have the great thing about it is we weren't struggling before that. So great marriage, everything was going great. Both had great paying jobs. We had what we wanted. Material wise, we were okay. Still in love with each other, having fun, yada, yada, yada. It was that, compressed 4 years of it just went down to the crapper, and, thank God we had the prior years as a base. Now, and a lot of people can't say that, maybe they struggled before that. They had relationship issues even before, but we had already a base. So I think that's really, and two is she's really family orientated. I won't lie. She had one foot out the door and she had a lot of money saved. And, if I didn't decide to get sober, she wasn't going to stay around and watch me die. She had already seen both of her parents pass away during my addiction, and, back-to-back years. So, and that wasn't because they had their issues with any alcohol or drugs, just, natural selection of life. People just, are taken from us. But she wasn't going to stay around and watch me, kill myself. And coming out of this, and I told her, I said, you had every right. I wouldn't have stayed around either if I was pushed to the envelope like you would. And she stuck through it. And, and like you said, working with Al-Anon and people that, she and her program and her sponsor, she started taking care of herself and, less worrying about me. And, finally I snapped out of it and, said, hey, I give up and let's try this thing. And here I am a little over 4 years later. So, and the biggest part is the communication process. I think that's pretty much, it's not perfect, but I think the way we talk to each other and how we appreciate each other now, and our programs talk to each other, which is, awesome. The Al-Anon, it's not perfect, but I think that her working hers, me working mine, we're talking about it, kind of fuses us together and we're on the same page, if you know what I mean.
And you're both very active in the community in helping people out.
Oh, we try to do as much as we can.
Yeah. You guys do a lot of work. And I will say, in fairness to her, a lot of it, she took the bull by the horns, not only was she doing what she could to help you, but she was doing a lot of work on herself. And if you're listening to this program tonight and you're not the one struggling, but it's a loved one that you have that's struggling, one thing that Mike's wife did was she got help for herself early on. She was really doing a lot of work to take care of herself. And I think that carried through, and it carries through to this day as well.
Yeah. And I think too, part of that is, and I've asked her this a couple of times, is like for us in AA, it's like a lifetime adventure, right? Because we're permanently alcoholics, right? So we're constantly in recovery. People that are in Al-Anon, do you really feel a sense of connections? You still have to be there because your loved one's recovered. I've been sober for 4 years, a little over 4 years. Mike, you've been sober a lot longer than me. You really need to, continue to go to Al-Anon, because you still have to work on yourself. And their answer is yes. She still stays connected to the program. She just got a treasury position recently. She likes to talk to her other Al-Anon friends and hear people's stories, and if she can help out with any kind of comments or whatever. So yeah, I mean, she stays with it not because, like, for us, I think because we need to have that structure of AA. She's more comfortable with the fact that she still wants to make sure she's involved. She knows, and she likes her group. So yeah.
Yeah, and you raise a good point, is that it's not even so much about helping herself, which she is, no doubt about it. But when you get into this program and you realize what a gift that you've been given, the gift of life, the gift of recovery, you share that with others. And if people that have been, these meetings need people that have experience, that have been through this, have been through the ups and downs, and been through the ups and downs while in sobriety, by the way, because life doesn't stop once you get into sobriety. But you have to have people that are there that can guide the newcomers and help them along. I mean, after all, you don't want to go to meetings where nobody in the room has been there longer than 1 week. I mean, you have to have people that are there that kind of, can walk you through the steps, can walk you through the process, can help you when you're in those hard times. And that's where you're at right now. That's where your wife is at right now, is helping those people. And, you, like me and your wife, we're not going to meetings so much because we have to. All right. I don't think I'm at any risk of, drinking tonight. I don't think that you are either, but that's not the point for me now. The point now is I'm there to help other people, and you're here and you help a lot of people as well. And I think that's one of the things about recovery is you start to realize it ain't all about you. It is about other people,
Mm-hmm. Yeah. I think, and the other part is, because if you start fading away a little bit, you kind of forget what you are. So if you don't stay connected, you might forget you're an alcoholic, and then I've just heard too many horror stories to let that happen.
And we've heard a lot of that over the last, number of months, however long we've been in this COVID lockdown.
Oh yeah.
You started out talking about that, and the fact that we're not going to meetings, we're not meeting face to face, we don't have that togetherness, and people are going back into that isolation. I know you've seen a lot of relapses. I've seen more relapses in the last 8 months than I have the entire time I've been in recovery, more during this time frame. And that's because people just aren't meeting together the way they were. Now, Mike, I wanted to ask you, so you said that, now correct me if I'm wrong on this, but so you retired from the military in 2004, and then it seemed to you that your drinking started to progress after that. Is that a fair statement?
That's correct.
Yeah. So do you, just out of curiosity, we talk about causes and conditions, right? The condition is we have that genetic predisposition towards addiction, but the cause, how much of the not being in the military, because I know you, and I know that being in the military like you were is a huge part of your life. That's a big source of pride, which it is with all veterans. But with you, I've noticed that it is like a really strong part of your identity. Do you think that maybe was there like a sense of loss on your part? Do you think that contributed to did you feel like you had kind of lost your way a bit? How did that play into it?
You know what? I tell you the truth, I don't know the exact action or feelings, or I knew I was trying. the sense of loss was the camaraderie with the folks, being part of a team, those kind of things. But I don't think that led, I really did miss the military, and I still continue to miss it. But I don't think that was a huge part of it for me. I just think it just kind of escalated, knowing that I think in some respect, I didn't have that kind of responsibility where I was going to be on call 24/7. I didn't have to get in uniform. I think it was a sense of celebration too, that I retired, and I just kept on celebrating past that point, which is kind of odd. You know what I mean? So it's kind
There's
of like
nothing wrong with having a party. It needs to end at some point, right?
Exactly. And it just kind of, I had military retirement pay, now I'm working at a great paying job, it's life is good. I own my own home, all that stuff is just like you're flying high, and it's like this, you're still like, you feel like you're untouchable. You just keep on doing what you're doing, and you don't, like I said, it just was, something that was part of my life, but I never saw it escalating to the point where it came later on in my drinking, that, beer turned into wine turned into vodka, that kind of progression, because now I wasn't getting the same feeling as, you're not getting the same feeling you was from beer. So now you go something a little bit stronger to get you that feeling quicker. Thus you go to wine. Then wine only lasts for so long. Then it was vodka. So even with the fact that, we talk about, things that we do to manipulate our drinking, like hiding, stuff from, our wives and those kind of things, doing things that we don't normally do in our drinking. So, but I don't think the transition from military life into civilian really had a big part of, I wasn't mentally or emotionally depressed that I was leaving the military. I was missing a lot of it, but I don't think that contributed to escalating in my drinking. I think it occurred naturally, just started snowballing at a pace where I was unaware of it, or again, being around other people that didn't say anything or didn't care.
Yeah, and you talked about the isolation. So I think that's a good point, is that it was more the camaraderie of the military. And I will say the same thing too. Those of you that have been in the military or been in police departments know the camaraderie is never experienced quite that way anywhere else. I can attest to that too. And you felt that loneliness and isolation. And then you couple that with just the genetic predisposition where it progresses over time. And that's just a deadly combination. And you had mentioned that your drinking became routine. So it was, and that's part of it too. It's just part of what you do. You're angry, you drink. You're happy, you drink. It's a Friday, you drink. It's a Saturday, you drink. Mm. It's a day that ends in Y, you drink, and then it becomes routine. But you mentioned something else, and that is that part of recovery, and I know that I've seen this in my own life as well, part of recovery is then developing those new routines. And when you do a routine long enough, then that just becomes the new norm. Because I can tell you where I'm at now, about 9.5 years of sobriety, when I have those bad days, or I have those bad things that happen, and that's happened. I've retired, had a job, lost a job. I've been to several different funerals. I've had good days. I've had horrible days at work. And I'm happy to report that in the last 9.5 years, the thought of drinking because of any of those issues has not occurred to me. And a lot of it is just because I've gotten out of that being my go-to, having a drink being a go-to. Do you think that that's part of your life now? Just that new routine, even on the bad days, I have a bad day, here's what I do, as opposed to drink.
Yeah, that's spot on. I would say the same thing. It's just, it doesn't really pop into my head. Maybe a few times it has. I've had some heated arguments with my wife, sometimes, and the thoughts, they pop in there somewhere, but they vanish quickly because of, the realization is that you're, like you said, you're playing the tape forward. I don't play it back, I play it forward. So I'll be like, okay, you go out to have a drink, and then this is what happens, right? So so you run it quickly through your head, and then it goes away. So, like I said, it's happened a few times, but the thing now is, you got tools that we use in the program, a lot about, and techniques that we use to do that. But it doesn't really come up with me much because, what I'm trying to do is, when I'm running into a problem, I'm stepping back and I'm pausing from it from a little bit, or maybe I break away from it and think about it. But certainly drinking is not an option for this solution I'm trying to find. The solution is, how can I deal with it? And what do I need to do to take care of the situation, whether it's meditating or talking to somebody or, working out, or maybe playing around a golf, or, whatever. Anything other than going to a store and buying alcohol. That's not going to, we realize, that's not going to solve anything. It's a short-term solution for a long-term problem. So that kind of it doesn't really filter into my mind so much anymore when I get into those situations. And to tell you the truth, that when I was drinking, I was creating more of those problems, which would create more drinking. So now that I'm not drinking anymore, I don't have those problems. So now it's just regular life experiences. It's just, I haven't had anything tragic. I remember telling people early on, I was like, I'm not sure, my mom's getting to the point where she's, she's not very well. And I think, man, the way I'm going to deal with that is just suck down a couple bottles. Right. So, but that's not really an option, is it anymore? Right. So, but I felt like that, because I love my mom. We've been connected, like I said, never had really a dad. So, and we're really tight, and I see people lose their moms left and right this year, and it is what it is. And I always thought, man, I won't be able to deal with that. So, but now, hearing stories and shares, I have ways of dealing with that. So it's really about listening to other folks' experiences, kind of, drawing me back in, other things to do besides having a drink. So.
Yeah. And taking a drink won't do anything but make it worse. Whatever problem you have, going and having a drink or a drug, if that's what you do, is going to make the situation worse. It really is. And by the way, not to mention, you talk about income. That's always financial issues. That's always a big problem with people that need to be in recovery. I haven't done it recently, but I remember at one point just adding up the amount of money that I was not spending on alcohol, and it blows your mind how much money you're not spending, which should help in the financial situation. Yeah.
Well, I was say on my tracker over 4 years, and this is a conservative figure, that I've saved $75,000.
Wow. And that's in 4 years.
That's in 4 years. And that's conservative.
Yeah. Yeah. I would say the same for myself. And that is really just taking kind of a low ball average, and I think it blows people's minds when they start working that out. And, so I just implore anybody that's out there listening right now, if you are on the verge of needing to be in recovery, and chances are, and you need to be honest with yourself about this, if you're listening to this program and you felt compelled to listen to this program and you're not already in recovery, chances are you have a need to be in recovery. And you're talking to two people here that did it. And we're here and alive and well to talk about it. And if we did it, you can do it too. Absolutely, no doubt in my mind that is struggling today. What final thoughts can you give them?
Well, one is you've got to be open and honest with yourself, that you're willing to take that step. And like we've learned in the program, at least for AA, is that being honest and open with yourself. It's just not, yes, I want to get sober. I don't want to drink anymore. But listening to other people working the program, how to stay sober. And if it's your time and you need to stop now, if you think you're drinking too much, then you're drinking too much. If you think you need to be in a program, you probably need to be in a program. So not so much people want to do it, for other people. You've got to want to do it for yourself. People want to do it for their wives or their family or whoever. And it really comes down to wanting to do it for yourself. Are you ready to take the next step, per se? Start at step 0 and get help, the help that you need. Because in the end, you stay on the same path. You dig yourself a hole where there's no ladder to crawl out of, and no one wants to see anybody certainly lose their lives over where there's a solution to make sure you can stay sober and get away from your addiction. So yeah, and take this program seriously if you're going to get into it.
Yeah, and I really love what you said that, and I've mentioned it before on this podcast, that normal social drinkers don't ask themselves those questions.
Yeah.
Think about it. The person that has that 1 or 2 glasses of wine during Christmas every year doesn't sit back and go, I wonder if I need to go to treatment. I wonder if I need to go to an AA meeting. They don't have those conversations. People like us have those conversations. And I love how you put it that way, Mike, that if you are asking yourself the question, or if someone else has asked you that question, you probably already know the answer to that. And there is help. There is help out that. So thanks again, Mike, for joining us, and really say hello to that wonderful wife of yours.
I will, and thanks for having me, Mike. I appreciate it.
Will, and thanks again. And folks, this episode is sponsored by FHE Health. According to SAMHSA, first responders are 30% more likely to develop behavioral health conditions like PTSD. FHE Health specializes in getting first responders better and cleared for duty. Find out more at FHEhealth.com, FHEhealth.com. And so, as I'd like to always say, we don't represent any group on this podcast. I do not represent anyone, and Mike doesn't represent anyone other than ourselves. Our only purpose is giving this information is to share with you what we've done because it's helped us, and maybe it'll help you too. So if we said anything that you don't agree with, try to take something that we did say that you can find useful and just discard the rest. That's what we do in recovery. We're just trying to help ourselves and help others along the way and impart whatever knowledge we have to help people along the way. So with that, please visit our Facebook page, Recovery is Possible, and our website, VanMeterWellnessSolutions.com. And let me know how I'm doing, and let me know if there's a topic that you're interested in hearing, because I'd love to hear from you. So guys, take care. Mike, and thank you for being on the show, and we will see you guys next time. We're out.